On this episode of iKM Media TV, we'll take a look at the main avenue oil companies are taking now that it seems almost impossible to build new pipelines. How that decision is impacting another sector of Canada's economy, and both government and industry show just how hard it is to earn the public's trust. Hello and welcome to iKM Media TV's Week in Review, where we focus on stories targeting the environment, safety, and innovation. I'm your host, Rob Hislop. First up today, while environmentalists and others are battling new pipelines around North America, it appears as if many of the oil companies have found a way around the protests, and that means that the amount of trains hauling Alberta crude is on the rise. And it turns out this may become more of a permanent fixture. Cenovus, for one, has appointed its first vice president of rail operations. And so far this year, the Calgary-based company has shipped 8 trainloads of bitumen. For the curious, the average train pulls up to 100 cars and transports as much as 60,000 barrels at a time. And while trains appear to be working and gaining in usage by oil companies, it's still much cheaper and much faster to use a pipeline. According to the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers, there are currently 200,000 barrels being shipped by rail per day. Within 2 years, it's expected that number could jump to 700,000. Okay, let's step outside of the oil industry for a moment and consider the impact that shipping all this crude by rail is having on agriculture here in Canada. Turns out there are just not enough trains to go around, and farmers are certainly feeling the pinch. In fact, some are not even able to get their grain to market because they can't get it on a train. So as a result of that and a grain surplus last year, there is a massive backlog. Now we're talking in the neighborhood of about 17 million tons of grains and oilseeds that have yet to be delivered. The federal government says it's trying to strike a balance. As a result, it has introduced new legislation requiring rail companies to move a minimum of 1 million tons of grain every week up until December. An Inuit village has now added its name to a growing list of lawsuits against the oil industry. Clyde River is located on the east coast of Baffin Island. It's about 2,000 kilometers from the North Pole. The waters in the region are populated with narwhals, bowhead whales, walruses, seals, and other marine mammals, which are the base of Inuit food and culture. The problem for the Inuit and the mammals is oil companies are salivating over the potential fines in the north. The indigenous group that launched the suit is arguing that seismic surveys, which are done by oil companies, could be fatal to sea life. While the National Energy Board admits that noisy air cannon testing, which is used to map out the ocean floor, could definitely have an impact on some whales, the federal organization still gave 3 companies the go-ahead. It's estimated the Arctic has almost a quarter of the world's undiscovered oil reserves. Getting at it is proving to be quite challenging and, so far, not at all cost-effective. Let's head south of the border now, because when it comes to oil and gas spills, the state of Colorado is well on its way to a record-breaking year. To date, there have been 467 spills of varying sizes. The high was set just last year at 575. At a rate of 2 a day this year, that number could easily be topped before the end of 2014. But it's not just the fact that there are more spills. Turns out oil companies aren't always letting their neighbors know about them. The American Petroleum Institute says that recently it announced new standards encouraging companies to communicate more with communities. And that isn't always happening. And sometimes the API says it's not the industry's fault, it's actually government's fault. As for government, the state says the high numbers simply reflect more drilling and how the new reporting requirements are working. That may not be enough, however, to ensure that people have faith that either the government or the oil industry is taking care of business. And speaking of spills, it appears as though some areas of the Gulf of Mexico that were impacted by the Deepwater Horizon oil spill 4 years ago are still feeling its effects. It was back in 2010 when BP's well ignited and pumped oil into the Gulf of Mexico for 3 months. 6 months after the spill, a survey showed severe damage was done to coral up to 13 kilometers away from the damaged well. Now, a new study of coral communities in the Gulf of Mexico shows the environmental disaster under the water spread further than expected or predicted. Coral communities as far away as 22 kilometers from the spill site and at depths of over 1,800 meters have been impacted. Well, is it possible that research being done at a tar pit in La Brea, Trinidad and Tobago could actually one day help clean up oil spills? Well, maybe. Turns out very tiny water droplets in the tar pits are crawling with ecosystems of bacteria and methane-producing organisms that could actually be harnessed to help break down oil spills. Now, this seems to mimic what a petroleum microbiologist at the University of Alberta has observed in samples from northern Alberta's oil sands. But those samples come from wells which have been injected with water during the drilling process, as a result contaminating naturally occurring water droplet ecosystems. So, more study is going to be done. As part of our ongoing look at the 4 finalists of Ernst & Young's Entrepreneur of the Year Awards in the Energy Services category, Prairie Division, today we want to introduce you to Alvin Pike with Helical Pier Systems.
We have a unique product which is unusual in the foundation business. You screw it in the ground. It's like if you consider a piece of drywall and you take a nail or a screw and you screw it or nail it into that drywall and pull on it, the screw is naturally going to have a better holding capacity than the nail would. Well, we've taken that technology to a much larger scale, and we're the pioneers. Albertans, not just us, but our competition, our biggest competition, are the pioneers in this business in Canada.
You can, of course, check out Alvin's whole interview at our site, iCanMedia.tv. Well, something else you might want to check out on our website is an article written by a couple of professors at the Alberta School of Business. They have laid out their reasons why critics of the oil sands might have missed the mark in demanding a moratorium on development. For iCan Media, I'm Rob Hislop.